Welcome, everybody, to our end of season recap press conference with head coach Kenni Burns. We'll open up the questions here in just one moment. But, Coach, just some final thoughts. Let's start with the game in senior day against NIU.
Yeah, tough loss. Came in. I thought our guys came in and battled hard and battled to the end, like they've been doing most of the year. Still didn't find a way to finish the game and complete it. But I appreciate their effort and their energy and a lot of things to clean up from that game as well and to clean up from the year. And that's kind of been the story of the year. I thought we've always battled pretty well, and the guys have given great energy and learned how to do things the way we want them to be done. And then going to the off season, I think the big focus is now is just how do we compete harder for longer. And I think that's going to be the mantra going into winter conditioning, and doing it harder and doing it for longer than what we were able to do it for, so we can close games out. But I think the clay is in place. I think this year was a great learning experience, not only for our team, but for me as a head football coach, of what you got to do to really be a great manager of the game, a manager of your roster. There's things that we'll do next year that we did really well this year. There's things I know that I want to change already. And it was just great learning experience for me. And I couldn't be more excited about the future, excited about our football team and where it's going, our coaching staff, and even our administration and the vision they have for our football department and where it's going. So I think the clay is definitely there. This year was disappointing, sure, from a win-loss total. You definitely want to win more games, and it's not acceptable by any measures on my own standards for our football program. But I know year one is about the dig and the foundation, and I think that was laid. And now I got to get some pieces on the recruiting trail to fit what we've already have, and then I got to make sure what's in our roster it continues to grow and gets better over the next 6-7 months here. So with that being said, I'll open up for questions.
Let's start with the Hustle Belt, Steve Helwick. Steve, if you'd unmute, any questions you've got for Coach, fire away.
Hi, Coach. This was your first season, I believe, at any level as a head coach, and you were just talking about being a learning experience. What are some of the things that you learned yourself from having a position like this?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is don't get too high, don't get too low. There's always an answer, and you know the answer, find it. And if you don't know it, get people around you that might know the answer to help you figure it out. But just don't get too high and too low. Definitely in year one, it was completely learning experience for a lot of people, myself, but then also our players in a new culture, a new environment. I think there was games where you saw us right there in it until the end. There was games that got away from us that, as a coach, you're trying to figure out why, constantly. So I think that's the biggest thing. Try to be a solution guy. Don't be a guy who's kind of soaking in your own spilled milk. But that's the big thing. Don't get too high, don't get too low.
I know this season was about growth. Are there any particular players on the roster that you think best embodied that growth from August to now?
Sure. I think when you look at our O-line, you look at Drew Page, you look at Chris Farrell. I think those guys are definitely grown. I mean, they were playing very confident football by the end of the season there, and definitely made our O-line better for sure. And then you look at Krishan McCray. I think you saw him at the beginning of the year show glimpses of being a pretty good player. Then by the end of the year, he was able to be a dynamic player before he got hurt. For sure, Alex Branch on defense was a guy who grew into a leader of our defense, which was outstanding. Maceo Williams was another one who you saw wasn't a starter by the end of the year, was starting reps for us. Then obviously Stephen Daly and Oliver Billick were two players that just their growth since I've been here to now has been outstanding. And those are the pieces that you get text messages from players after a game like that, and they're just eager to get to work right away. And some of those guys were those guys, and they see it. They see it being the foundation being laid, and they want to be a part of it. And it's just exciting times for our football program from that standpoint, because there is so much youth on our roster that'll be back and that can grow from this. But those are some guys that jump right off my head.
And the last thing I have is just encouragement. How do you kind of keep these players encouraged? I know the win-loss total can be frustrating for the players at the time, but how do you sell players on saying that this rebuild is going to work and 2024 is going to be another stepping stone in the right direction?
Yeah, I think you keep the main thing. The biggest thing I told these guys in the spring was don't get caught up in the record. It is what it is this year. There's going to be some growing experiences for all of us throughout this, and you just got to keep putting the work in, putting the effort in, and you'll see it. And we didn't win on Saturday, but I think they saw how close we were to a team that beat a BCS opponent. So we're not far off. I think we need some pieces to come on our roster, and honestly, we need to have some pieces move on our roster that are probably stunning our growth as a football program. So it's a little bit of both, but I think our locker room's really encouraged. We had a meeting this morning at 7 a.m. about next year, and the big message was you're in. So what's that mean? We're invested. We're intense. We're intentional about all our work, but it was in. Like, you got to be 2 feet in right now. You can't be 1 foot in anymore. Now you guys know the expectations. You know the culture going into this offseason. We got to be totally in, all in, and that's kind of our message. But I thought the energy was great. We're having exit meetings right now as a coaching staff with every single player. I meet with every single player to tell them about their future and how I see them growing in this culture. But I think our team is excited. I do. I think the loss record is what it is, but I think there's been a lot of stories out there, and I've showed them of teams that have struggled in year one under a new head coach, that laid a foundation that was very similar to how we did it this year, that have had success in year 2, year 3, year 4. And it's all about how quickly can this roster, the whole roster, not 60 players, but the whole roster buy into what we're doing. And I think we're getting closer and closer.
Thanks, Coach.
Let's go over to Kent Stater and Kent Myers, Jacob Schondel. Jacob, any questions here for Coach?
Yeah, hello, Coach. Just was there anything this season that really impressed you or just really stood out throughout the season?
I think the one thing that I say really stood out was our guys' ability to keep responding every day. That's why I know we're going to be fine once this youth movement happens, because each week the effort that they came in and practiced with was just outstanding. It was just kind of like they were eager for more. And I think even in that last game, you saw them fight to the end. I mean, they're playing for really nothing in people on the outside's opinion, but for us, we were playing for the growth of our program, and that's what's encouraging about me. They take pride in what they're doing, and they were eager to get back to work today, and really all these next couple of weeks. And I think that's what's exciting about our team is their response mechanism. That's in place. I think when I told these guys, year one is real simple to me. It's learning how to do things. Everybody's learning how to operate in a new culture, a new environment, a new system, offensively and defensively, and everybody's learning at different times. Year two is simple. It's all about now competing. Now you know how to do it. Now you got to go compete at a higher level, and I say harder for longer. That's kind of our whole thing this year, or going to be next year, and off to the spring. So, to me, we're right on par where we should be. I know I'd love to have more W's, obviously, but I think the response mechanism's there, the want-to's there. And now as coaches, we got to do our job and make sure the youth kind of develops and grows and turns into what we know it can be. And I've been a part of this at Wyoming. I was a part of this at Minnesota, Western Michigan, the rebuilds. And this is, to me, we're right on schedule. Now it's making sure you have the right people in your program, and you make sure those people grow and develop and maximize their potential. And that's what we're doing as coaches, and that's why we're meeting with everybody right now, and we'll give them a clear, concise vision on what they got to do coming back. And like I said, we'll put the pieces together.
And then what would you say was the biggest thing that you may have learned this season as a head coach? And I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, just with your first time.
Yeah, I think it went back to really don't get too high, don't get too low. And then there's always an answer and a solution. I think the biggest thing is also, when you're the head coach, you are, and PJ told me this when I got this job, he said, you're the standard now. How you live your life, what you do every day, what you're saying to your staff, to your players, and trying to hold them accountable. You have to be living it. We live grit here by growing, responding, integrity, togetherness. Just making sure that I'm consistent with that messaging, with how I'm going about my business. I can't be too high, too low after a game. I got to find the right response mechanism that I'm asking them to have. I got to make sure my integrity is in place when I'm dealing with them and when emotions run high, and then make sure they know that we're all in this together, and I'm with them, and I understand what they're going through, and how much they feel defeated at times because they're not getting the result they want, and all that stuff. So I think that's a big thing too, just knowing that you're the standard, and you got to be the standard every day, and make sure they can follow your lead as the head football coach.
And then lastly, I know the season just ended, you're finished on close in the book here, but just what do you hope the team and then really the coaching staff can accomplish over this offseason? Yeah,
I think for the team, just growth. We got to all grow. Like I said, we got to be all in now to the growth of our football program. I think last year guys were kind of at times 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Okay, I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I like that. We got to mature as a football team, and we identify maturity in our program as when doing what you have to do becomes doing what you want to do. They've got to start. This has got to start becoming what they want to do. This grit culture. It can't be anymore what was me, I got to go to this, I got to go to that. No, it's got to be what I embrace and I spread among our team and so forth. And that's that whole in mindset right now, being all in. That's kind of the off-season mantra. We just got to be all in with everything we do and be intentional, intense, invested, all that stuff that we talked about this morning in our team meeting. And I thought the guys understood that, and they left that meeting feeling like, okay, we got the message. Let's rock and roll and hold each other accountable and make sure we're all in.
Thank you.
Let's go over to our radio booth and start with the voice of the Golden Flashes and Rob Polinsky. Rob, any questions for Coach?
Thanks, guys. Coach, going back to Saturday for one,
Yep.
just wondering how encouraged are you for the future of the fact that your team did compete and competed longer and I thought harder, for 4 quarters against a quality team, especially when you fell behind, 10-0. What do you think that says, and what can you use from Saturday to kind of springboard into the offseason going into 24?
Yeah, it would have been nice to win that one because they did a lot of things right in that football game. They got down 10-0 right away. They didn't soak. They didn't pout. They played the next play and got back in the ball game and took the lead in the halftime. And then came out, with just a costly mistake, by a veteran player. Made a costly mistake with the fumble. And, we even responded from that, and got back on top again. So that was a lot of growth, and we took them to the wire. And I think Coach Hammock knew that he was kind of, I think everybody can see what we're doing with this team and where we're going. I think it's just, again, getting there sooner. By getting more people invested into what we're doing. And it's encouraging for sure. By the end of the day, I'll be graded on wins and losses, so I understand that. And I know as we get into this thing next year and the years following that, we've got to start putting some results together too. But I know it comes with the maturation of a football program. And understand this, we're starting from scratch. And I never use that as an excuse, but we lost a lot of players. And we're teaching a lot of new players how to compete and how to do things, and that's part of it. They need to go through some failings so they can learn from it and grow. There's a lot of guys that have already failed earlier this year that learned and grow. There were some new faces in that game, especially on defense, that had some failings and learned, and they're going to grow as well. So it's just putting it all together. But the thing that I'm constantly encouraged by is the effort and the energy that they're playing with for 4 quarters right now. I think it's been there for some weeks now, and we had to step back a little bit against Ball State, but I think against the school down the road, against Buffalo, Boulder, you saw the competitiveness of our football team, and we just got to put it all together.
Coach, finally, my last one. Can you just kind of explain to us how you're going to go through the offseason? How you mentioned you've got your exit interviews with the players. Obviously, you got to go through with the coaches what you liked, what you didn't. Recruiting, you've got that coming up in a couple of weeks. Your off-season conditioning. Can you just kind of go through maybe how you figure out in what order and the importance of getting things set up for this offseason?
Sure, and I've been working on it probably for about a month and a half now, just the old off-season schedule, and it's pretty dialed up and ready to roll. But we'll have exit meetings all this week. We won't go out. We'll see where our roster's at. Obviously, there'll be movement. There always is. That's college football right now. There's guys that'll leave on their own because they want a bigger school, and they've got the opportunity. They've done enough to have that work for them. There'll be others that have to move on just because it's not a good fit, probably for us and them, and it's time for them in their career to move on. And then there's the guys on our roster that we really got to make sure that we keep on our roster and we develop and we make sure they're here and do everything to make sure they're back next year. And I think that's what this whole week is about. Again, evaluating each player as a coaching staff. We did that a little bit yesterday. Evaluated our roster, and now they're meeting over what we went over there. And then I'll meet with everybody starting tomorrow for the rest of the week. And then we'll, get into recruiting hard the next 2 weeks after that, hit the road, make sure we got a really good recruiting class that we're attempting to sign. We got to make sure we hang on to all those guys. They're important to the future. And then the guys will have off. They'll focus on their academics after this week and really make sure we finish strong in the classroom the next 2 weeks. And then we'll be off really the 20th. We'll be gone as a coaching staff, and then the players will be off really next week after their finals are done, or a week and a half. And they're off until the middle of January, June. I think we come back January 14th. And then we'll kick off winter conditioning and meetings. I mean, we'll crank it up. The coaching staff will be back in, I think, January 3rd. And we'll be really investing on the future, what I call it, with the transfer portal, making sure that's good. But then also going through the whole season's cut-ups and making sure we watch every single down, snap, have evaluations of players, scheme, techniques that we're teaching, just grade it all, and then really come up with this really book, we call it, of the 2023 season, and make sure that we have a plan going into 2024, first and foremost from our roster standpoint, and then from a schematic standpoint, what adjustments do we need to make and everything else. And then the 14th, we'll crank it back up, and it'll be 8 weeks or 9 weeks of just winter conditioning, where we'll really get after it a little bit. It'll be different than last year. I think last year, again, we're teaching them how to do things. This year, it's going to be all centered around competing and investment and intentional work. So it's going to be hard and grueling, but it's going to be good for them. And I told them that this morning. I said, get ready to crank the wheel up a little bit. Year 2 is very different than year 1 when you talk about winter conditioning and that stuff. So that's our strength coach, Jake Niemeyer, will do a great job with that, and our coach will be very, very involved in that winter conditioning process. And then spring ball hits, and we're rocking and rolling and building our roster. Then before you know it, the year's here again. So that's kind of how it looks for us. And recruiting never stops. I always said never, ever stops. We recruit hard during the season. We recruit hard now. And then really what happens is, next week after the 4th, the transfer portal opens up, and now it starts to be focused on that side of recruiting more so. How can you enhance your roster, make it better? Obviously, you lose a couple guys, but there's so many options in that portal that you can really pick up some good players if you comb through and do a really good job of guys who are looking to play. And we typically look for guys who want to come up. The FCS All-Americans, guys who are doing well at that level, typically do well at this level as well. And then there'll be some guys at the bigger schools that drop down that we have familiarity with. I think the biggest thing when guys drop down from like a bigger school, we want to have familiarity with as coaches to know about their character and make sure we bring high character people in, and not guys that are just complaining and moaning about where they're at and they're not getting this or that, but bringing high character guys in from that. So it's a process for sure, but I know it's one that I've never been more energetic and excited about an off season. Just because I see where we're at, and I kind of got a great pulse on exactly what we need to do to get where we want to go, and that's the exciting thing as a coach. The biggest thing is in December, I didn't want to finish the season and be like, okay, where am I? Am I starting from scratch here again, or I don't know where my needs are going to be. I feel like I've got a really good pulse on where our football team is, and that to me is really encouraging, because now it's like, okay, you need a piece here, you need a piece there. You need a schematical change here, schematical change there, and now everything else is about growing your roster and making sure they get bigger, faster, stronger this offseason. So that's kind of where we're at. I hope that answers your question. Got a lot of information thrown at you there.
Well, I appreciate it, and just in closing, I just wanted to thank you for taking all the time you did with us this year. Thanks, Coach.
No problem. Thank you, buddy.
And we'll wrap things up, I'm sure, with some offensive line talk and timeouts.
You should be excited, man. All those guys back.
It is. Hell, I'll get to know them maybe a year later. It'll be a lot easier, Coach.
Right.
Coach, you kind of touched on a little bit with the transfer portal. Talk to me about the approach of your staff. Do you look for position specific, or are you looking for, the best available athletes out there? What's the approach? Because we're still relatively new, and it's still kind of morphing.
Yeah, I think you got to look at it positional specific. Like guys are gonna leave on our roster, obviously, and just so you guys know, from that standpoint, we're not we support our players 120%. And if a guy feels like he's got opportunity to go somewhere else and help his career and make money and really advance himself, I'm 120% for that, because the NFL is not guaranteed to anybody on our team, and if they can get guaranteed money now, that's what NIL's for. So I'm going to support them. I'm going to speak highly of them to other schools as they call and reach out. Then I'm going to give them our pitch on why Kent State is a great place for them to stay as well, and what we have here and what we're building and how they're going to be instrumental to that. But as guys leave, I think that's when you start to look in the portal to see, okay, who can I replace and can I upgrade the guy that left? My job, I tell the rosters, my job is to out-recruit you. I tell our team that all the time. I got to out-recruit you. What's that mean? I either got to recruit you with a better version of yourself or find somebody that can play better than you to keep the competitive nature of our roster moving. So that's the biggest thing, I think, is looking at where our roster actually is, and then looking position specific at our depth at each position. And there's some that I feel about our depth at offensive line. It was inexperienced, but it's a deep room now with a ton of experience moving into the offseason. I feel really good about our defensive line. It's got a lot of depth there that's coming back. If you look at our linebackers, we've got some inexperience there a little bit, but we've got a really good recruiting class coming in at that position. So I need probably one transfer there that could help us just to bridge the gap of losing Devin, and so forth. But you got Caleb Johns off of injury, hopefully coming back. You've got Saeed, who played. C.J. Harris is coming back. So you got a lot of experience there as well. So I think it's each position specific, and it's what happens with the portal. But I think our coaches have done a phenomenal job of just keeping their pulse on their room. I always tell them, you're the head coach of your room, meaning that you've got to have a good pulse on your room and know what's going on in there and be able to tell me exactly what you need, and how I can help you. But I feel really good about the guys coming in and the roster we have, and I think we'll use the portal spottingly here and there to get some guys on our thing. But the great thing about this year compared to last year is our culture is already in place. Last year, it was a new group coming. It was portal kids coming in, guys left, me teaching the current roster, the culture, then teaching the portal kids. It was a total like throw your hands up in the air type moment. This year, our guys are going to be able to help guys who come in kind of learn our culture and learn how we do things here, and I think that's a major advantage this year.
Coach, I want to touch on that a little bit because it's absolutely 100% clear what your expectations are for the culture of your program. It's a little bit different from recruiting wide-eyed high school football players than it is somebody that maybe spent a year or two in another program.
Yeah.
How do you separate that out as far as the culture is concerned with a guy that is maybe looking to make a change to make sure that because the culture is so important to you,
Yeah.
and really that's been a clear message that's going to be a fit for you.
Yeah, I think you just as a recruiter, and all of us are coaches, we're recruiters, right? You've got to dig. You've got to find out why a guy's leaving. I think that's where guys make the biggest mistake. They take just the talent alone and say, okay, I saw this kid in high school who's a really talented player in high school. He's got a ton of ability. But why is he leaving? Is he a cancer on the roster that he's on and he's being asked to leave? Is he leaving because he just complained the whole time and nothing was ever good enough? Or is he leaving because he really wants a shot? And he wants a shot and he's going to come in eager and ready to work. And those are the ones you want. That's what Devin Nicholson was. He was a guy who was, everybody you called about him spoke very highly of him, of his character, the man he was. He just wanted to be a starter. He'd been a backup in the SEC, wanted to start somewhere and have an opportunity to be a starter his last year. And I think that's what we're looking for. I think this program will always be built on high school kids. And that might be why this takes a little bit longer to get everything in place, because there's going to be another cycle of high school kids that play next year that are very young, that learn. But that's just what I believe in. You look at the teams around our roster, around our league that did that. The Miami of Ohio's of the world, the Ohio's of the world, the Eastern Michigans, guys that are having consistent success. To me, they built it with high school kids who came in through their culture and did a 3-year process and were able to win as juniors and seniors. And that's what we're going to do here. But I think as your roster changes and you lose guys, I think you got to keep your roster, your age gap consistent. So if I lose a junior D lineman or a junior safety, then I want to replace it with another junior safety, just so your numbers stay consistent and you're not heavy in one class or the other. But I think that's the biggest thing for us, finding out where the needs at as a position coach, and then making sure our roster management stays consistent with how many guys we want in each class and what our depth is for that class at each position, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah.
And I want to reiterate what Rob said to thank you for working with us this year. I've been throwing an invitation out there. I know he's calling basketball, but I'll be calling some wrestling. And you're more than welcome to come over to some of the wrestling matches and,
I'm all
sit
in.
at the table. We'll let you get a little commentary in and with what's going on with the wrestling program.
Oh, I love it. I love
the
it.
Golden Flag as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of good sports coming in, and I'm, if you don't know anything about me, I'm a big sports junkie. I just like competing. I was at a lot of things last year. It'll be the same this year, so I'm always rooting for our Flashes, and I want to wish those guys best of luck as they start their seasons too. And some already started, but you'll definitely see me there. I might take you up on that for sure.
There we go. Good stuff, Coach. Thank you.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Coach, any final thoughts?
No, I appreciate the coverage that you guys do as well, and your patience with us this year. We're obviously moving in the right direction, and the story you guys are able to tell only helps that in recruiting. And we really appreciate that as a coaching staff and administration. And go Flashes, Kent Grit. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Much appreciated on the coverage this year.